Hi, welcome to Senior Speak New Hampshire. My name is Dan Wise. I'm your host and a volunteer with AARP, which is a sponsor of this show. In New Hampshire, as in many parts of the country, housing prices are sky high. Median prices here in New Hampshire are above $500,000. Often we think about the impact of this housing shortage and housing inflation on young people who are having difficulty buying their first home. If a house is priced low enough for them, it draws a crowd of buyers because there are just not enough homes out there for sale. But part of the problem can be seen at the other end, the supply end. And a lot of times that's a factor because of older homeowners who want to downsize and sell the home that they have, but they just don't see enough supply of a smaller, easier to manage home, a house with accessibility features they might need as they age. So what can we do about that? The legislature is considering dozens of bills to incentivize more building of affordable homes. But there's a struggle between the desire for more housing on one hand and on the other, not overwhelming a community with too many homes too quickly. One of the remedies that's being looked at is ADUs, or AKA mother-in-law apartments, or additions. Homeowners today in New Hampshire are allowed to build one additional dwelling unit if they have a single-family home and they are in a single-family zone. And there are a couple of bills in the legislature that will expand or liberalize the ability of homeowners to build ADUs. And we'll see where those come out once the dust settles after this legislative session, because we're right in the middle of it now here in April. So instead of talking about policy, we're going to talk about the practicalities of ADUs. And a quick note, in my research, I found that ADUs, I've known they've been around for a while, but that they were even on TV. Remember the TV show Happy Days? Well, the Fonz, hey, he actually lived in an ADU above the Cunningham's garage. So anyway, we're going to talk about ADUs with Jessica Stevenson, who's a co-owner of Kinstruct Tiny Homes from Pembroke. Jess, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Looking forward to this. First of all, can you explain what Kinstruct Homes is? You're not just a builder. Can you just kind of give us what your level of services are? And then we'll talk more generally about tiny homes.
Yeah, of course. So at Kinstruct Tiny Homes, we set out with a goal to be an all-inclusive provider of these ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, in-law apartments, whatever you want to call them. And the reason we want to be so all-inclusive is because when I was putting an ADU on my house, my husband and I, his mom lives with us, my mother-in-law, and she needed her own space. So when we started kind of digging into it, and we talked about lots of options, right? Like there's assisted living, there's buying a condo, there's downsizing, and of course there's lots of challenges related to each one of those. And so we landed on an ADU. And when we decided it was the right fit for our family and that we were gonna go ahead and build one, there was lots of challenges and lots of, I don't want to call them roadblocks, but there's just lots of hurdles that you have to get through in one step after another. And we were like, wow, this is really overwhelming. And like, there's a lot of moving parts to something like this. You don't just go and apply for a permit to build an ADU. You need to think about utilities. You need to think about logistics. You need to think about your septic, if you're on a septic system. You need to think about what are your town zoning requirements for that ADU. So we set out to be the all-inclusive ADU builder, meaning when you come to us and say, hey, I need an ADU on my property, we're not just gonna build you the ADU. We're gonna make sure that your septic design is done. We're gonna make sure your utility connection is correct. We're gonna make sure you meet all the zoning requirements. We're gonna go sit in front of the planning board for you if that's something that you need to do in your town. We're gonna go through the variance process with you if that's something that you choose to do. And then we're gonna, of course, build the unit. And then after that, we're gonna make sure that everything is settled. We're gonna make sure you have your certificate of occupancy to move in. We're gonna make sure that your home insurance is now representative of the new home that you have built. Yeah. And also we're gonna make sure your title insurance is correct, because now your home is much more valuable. So at that point too, we're also gonna refer you to a trust attorney. Is it time to talk about putting this property in a trust if it's not already in one? So we really take it from A to Z and try to be the one-stop shop for everything that you're going to need.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So that's great. So we will get into some more of those details, but I thought it would be helpful to do a little bit of an overview of what ADUs are and what kind of variations there are in that. And AARP did a great video on that we're going to show right now.
Great.
ADUs can take many forms. They can be attached to an existing home or be a standalone structure. Let's explore some ways homeowners can build ADUs and how they can help older adults remain in their community. An existing garage offers several possibilities. For example, one owner might convert their garage into a fully accessible apartment for themselves as their mobility changes, and rent out their original house to a family to generate income. Or another owner might keep their garage and build an apartment over it as a low or no cost apartment for a caregiver or family member. A basement could also become an apartment. Or an attic. The homeowner might also build a small standalone structure on their lot for guests or to rent out for additional income, or a family caregiver if they ever need one. And later could become their primary home when they want to downsize or live in a more accessible unit. Regardless of how and why they're built, ADUs can help ensure that people of all ages, including older adults, have more options in where and how to live in their own communities.
Okay, well, thanks for that. So that video is on the aarp.org website. You could just go to that video, that website, and you can type into ADUs into the search, or you can look if you see a section called AARP Livable Communities, and it's got a whole lot of things about housing and other aspects of what makes a livable community for folks over 50. So that's something to think about. So thinking about New Hampshire and the New Hampshire market, what are some of the reasons that you find they're driving people to add ADUs, and what are some of the more popular types that they're going for, of the different types there are?
So we see a lot of the same reasons over and over and over because of the things you mentioned in the beginning, kind of the lack of inventory, things like that. So we're seeing people are exploring options for accessory dwelling units for parents who are looking to age in place. Lots of times, having a parent on site to age in place there is not only helpful for the parent, but maybe there's kids and grandkids and it's helpful for the whole family. Maybe there's childcare involved that solves an issue for. Maybe there's rides that somebody needs that solves an issue for. So there's a lot of overlap there. We also see folks deciding to build these for young adults that are their children that maybe can't break into the housing market because of that median home price being over $500,000. This is a great alternative for that, and they're building right on their family property and creating this nice multi-generational solution. We're also seeing this as a great solution for individuals with special needs that are living at home with a family member, because we can custom build these to be as accessible as you need them. So that provides that individual with kind of a semi-independent living solution while still keeping everybody safe and having all the resources they need right there.
So your website has like a frequently asked questions website page, and they're going to put that up on the screen for us. So I'm just trying to think of some of the questions that you hear the most often. I guess probably one of them is, legally, can I do it?
Yeah.
And the law is, can you explain kind of what the rights that most people have at this point, and what are some of the circumstances that need a little more attention?
A little more digging, yeah, absolutely. So think of it this way: if you live in a single-family home and you have some space around you, right, provided your neighbor isn't right next door, you can start to think about an ADU, because these are allowed in residential zones that have single-family homes on them. So in New Hampshire, since 2017, ADUs have been allowed. So at a state level, New Hampshire is saying, hey, towns, you have to allow this for people that live in single-family homes. Now, how the towns allow it is really up to them, and that's where a lot of this kind of extra digging comes into play. So we'll come out and we'll take a look. A lot of this too we can do virtually, just over the phone or on a Zoom call, kind of, at a high level overview. We'll take a look at your property, make sure that we're within the setbacks. There's lots of great tools that we use that pull in GIS maps and setbacks and all of that fun data that we need to do what we do. And we can kind of help you determine, is my property a good fit for this, and where do you want it? Do you want it right attached, or do you want it maybe for a little bit further back in the backyard?
Yeah, and then you've got to deal with, you have to, regardless of whether it's an addition or it's a property, you've got to look at the ground. There's going to be some groundwork that's involved too, right?
Right.
And then you're looking at a self-sufficient unit, so you're going to have its own. It's going to have its own set of plumbing and electricity and that sort of thing. Right?
That's right.
So,
and utilities sometimes is even something that a town specifies in their zoning. Most of the time, what we're doing is pulling the utilities directly from the primary dwelling that's already there, which means the way that we build these is on a foundation. So we're digging the foundation, and then we're also digging a trench to the house, and we're connecting your electric, we're connecting your plumbing, we're connecting your water supply. We're connecting all of that to the primary dwelling. So if any of those, like say for example, your electric panel was totally maxed out and it was only 100 amps, we're going to make sure that you get that panel upgrade to support the ADU.
yeah. Okay. Now, this is something I saw somewhere too. Is that that if you are tied to the other unit like that, it isn't ever going to be a separate property that would be sold off. For example, it's probably going to be the two properties together.
Probably. Right now, that's exactly right. That's how it is. And some towns will even go so far, for Manchester, as example, Manchester, New Hampshire, they say if you want a detached ADU, that's fine. We can talk about that, and we can give you that permit. And then what they do at the end is make you record a covenant on your deed, which is obviously something that we help with, and we get that done for you before your certificate of occupancy. We'll record a covenant on your deed that says, hey, all the future owners, this ADU goes with this house. You can't condo it and sell it separately. Now, that being said, there are laws recently passed in California that do allow the condo, turning an ADU into a condo and selling it off. So we're definitely not there. I don't know if that's something New Hampshire will ever like.
Things start in California. They sometimes come this way, but not always.
Not always, right.
Yeah.
So think of it as one property. You're creating a multi-generational living solution.
All things being equal, is there a difference between attached versus detached? Is one going to be a better economic value, or I mean, what are some of the trade-offs between one versus the other? If somebody had a situation where they could do either.
Sure, great question.
How does that happen?
All things being equal, there's not a difference in value at the end of the day. It's really going to come down to preference and your site specifics. So we're looking at things like the slope of the yard, maybe it's going downhill, maybe we're looking for something more entry level with no steps for accessibility. So if your town allows both and you have a preference on one or the other, doing a detached, for example, as opposed to attached, isn't going to make any difference in value for your property at the end of the day. It's really just preference.
Okay. I'm wondering what's been there's been a lot of talk out of Washington about tariffs on Canadian goods, which includes
Lumber. Yes.
So what's happening with building materials costs and for you guys?
Yeah, so yes, it is. We're kind of prepping for a little bit of volatility there, or maybe more than a little bit, I don't know, but we'll see. So right now we deal directly with our lumber yards, local lumber yards here in New Hampshire, and so they're really, really good at keeping us up to date on, hey, this is what we're seeing come down the pipe, this is what we're expecting, and so that's obviously information that we're going to pass along to our clients as soon as we get it and we know, but unfortunately, yeah, that's kind of just par for the course, that if there's a tariff increase in prices, there will be an increase in prices if that tax is going to be kind of a pass-through cost. But of course, we're going to let you know right away because we get kind of up-to-date information frequently.
Yeah, now, they're in your name. Tiny Homes is in your name, and I think of tiny homes as being these cute little cottages that you can actually move.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing any of those? At what point do they enter the conversation for people who are in the ADU market?
Yeah, that's another fantastic question, because tiny homes a lot of people do think, oh, I'm on wheels, I'm movable. We do not build anything on wheels. We don't do anything that's prefab or modular. We're doing all of our building right on site. So like I said, we're getting our lumber from the local lumber yards, they're delivering it, and we're building according to your custom plans. If you wanted something movable or prefab, we have partners here in New Hampshire that we're happy to recommend you to if that's a better option for you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really just specific to what the family wants.
Is the zoning, does that affect the zoning, or that, I've heard that sometimes tiny homes, it's harder to
Tiny homes
build
on
them.
wheels. Tiny homes on wheels would absolutely not fall into the ADU zoning here in
typically
New
zone
Hampshire.
ADU
No, this
zoning.
is. Think of it similar to like an RV, right?
Yeah.
The town's not going to, be super excited if you parked an RV in your driveway and started living in it full time.
Okay. So can we talk about the costs? Can you give me kind of a typical example, and maybe we could look at some, there's some examples of houses on your site, and you could, if you tell me the name of them, we could probably drop in a picture of the one that you were mentioning before, like the something 650, was it?
The Ossipee 660.
Ossipee
yep.
650, which is on your website.
Yep.
All right, so what's an example of kind of what the site costs are, and because that's a detached, and is that a two-bedroom?
That's a one-bedroom.
That's a one-bedroom.
Yep.
Okay. So the Ossipee 650. So it's a one-bedroom, 650 square feet.
Just about.
Okay.
660. Yep.
660. So is that kind of like a one-bedroom apartment, or like a studio?
It's a true one-bedroom. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what do you find the site costs run typically?
Yes. So for all of our pricing, it is on our website. We have the starting at prices for all of the different models. We have the Sunapee series, that's studios. The Ossipee series is our one-bedrooms. The Tecumseh series is 2 bedrooms, and then we have Gunstock models that are actually garage with an ADU over those. Those are all mountains in New Hampshire, by the way. So we have lots of different options there, and all of the starting at pricing is on the website. Now that starting at pricing includes your excavation and your foundation. And it includes the entire build and a move-in ready unit. So we're talking appliances, we're talking a kitchen tile backsplash, we're talking a tile shower, quartz countertops. We quote a little bit above builder grade because we're gonna assume that mom's gonna live there, and you want it to be really durable and really safe and a little bit nice, because it's family that's living there, not not just any old renter. But also, that being said, if down the road you're using this for a different purpose, we also want this to last. So we're looking at a couple different options there. So the prices for all of our models range about between $140,000 to upwards of $340,000. If you're doing a huge 2-car garage, a full house above it, that can start to get pricey. Most folks, I would say, fall within the $190,000 to like $275,000 range. That's where most folks are falling, because they're thinking about, I want a 1-bedroom. Might not need 2 bedrooms, but I want a decent size 1-bedroom. And again, this cost is all inclusive of everything that we're trying to do. Our goal is to come in and do this build and not give you any surprises. We don't like surprises when we're building. So when we come out to your site, we're going to look at the distance that you want to put it from your house, and we're going to measure what we need for trenching. So the only thing that we're adding to that cost for individual properties, site-specific stuff, is like the trenching, or if you were going to attach it to a part of your house, do we need to build a breezeway to meet the town requirements? Does that breezeway need to be heated?
Oh, if it's attached and you're having 2 separate dwellings, they might require a breezeway?
Correct. Yep.
Rather than just a door between one and the other?
Correct. What they'll say is sometimes they need to be attached. Sometimes when the unit is allowed to be attached, they'll say it can be attached, but there's always a but, right, when you're talking about zoning. But it has to be attached to heated living space. In which case, sometimes people want to put this onto like a garage because it's on the other side of the house, and logistically that's where it flows better.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, a garage is not heated living space.
Right.
So now we're talking about how do we get some heated living space over to this area? In which case, we're looking at building a breezeway, I mean, I use the term breezeway, but it's going to be a heated space.
Oh, okay.
So
it's a heated space, but not really one you
a
live in
living
all the
area,
time.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Lots of folks like to use it for like a mudroom or like a common laundry area.
Are there any mistakes to avoid that you would think? I mean, say, because some people are not going to necessarily go with you guys. They may use a builder that's not as familiar with the whole ADU process. Do you have any advice for those folks? Because they maybe, for one reason or another, they're using a builder that that they know and trust, but
Sure.
they're not as familiar. What are some of the things that you warn somebody to be on the lookout for?
That's an excellent question. So I always, I think that if you're in today's day and age, everybody should be using software, right? There's no reason why you should be getting a handwritten bid from any contractor today. We want to make sure there's lots of moving parts to this kind of build.
And
it
so
is
you might-
very complicated.
Yeah,
Yes.
so when something unexpected or unforeseen in the government way of doing things, they ought to be able to. That's an
To
interesting.
adjust,
They ought
yes.
to be able to adjust. And
Yes,
yeah,
and
okay,
make
that's
sure
a
that
great
it's
point.
fair for all the parties. And
Yeah.
if your bid came in on a piece of graph paper, that's a little bit of a red flag to keep an eye out for. There's lots of fantastic software out there. It's not very expensive for builders to utilize, and it's extremely helpful for everybody. And then the other thing is just make sure that you really have a conversation about the logistics of where this is going. You want to make sure that obviously you're inside the setbacks, your building setbacks for your lot. And then you want to think about things like who's carrying in the groceries? Where are they parking? How
Yeah,
far do they have to walk?
Oh, yeah.
Who's shoveling for
you
them?
put it in the back,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Oh,
everybody really
interesting, yeah.
loves to put these like super far away, right? But
Yeah.
does that make sense logistically? Because now your electric pole is really far, and now if you're on a well, your well pump has to reach all the way back there. So there's lots of
Yeah.
things like that to
And how
think
do you
about.
and the egress, walking there and back? Are you going to
Correct.
tear up all of the?
Yeah, now you're paying for a lot of landscaping, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Oh, very good point. That's great. So, all right. I'm trying to think of what other things to run through with you.
Financing is a good one. We didn't
Okay.
really touch on financing
Yeah.
yet. Lots of people, because of the price of these, because we're building a real house here. So although they are small, once they start going up, you're going to say, "Oh my gosh, this is not very small. This is not very tiny," because we have big equipment there. We're going to make a mess. It's going
Yeah.
to get worse before it gets better. But that being said, this is a big investment for families, right? This is definitely an investment that most families will only make once in their life. So do we offer financing for that? Kinstruct Tiny Homes does not have financing in-house. However, we will partner with local banks. There's a handful of local banks now that have ADU-specific loans, which is
okay.
super exciting. So if a family has a mortgage on the current property, maybe they bought it 6 or 7 years ago, and their mortgage interest rate is 2.5%. They're not refinancing that into a 7% mortgage rate, nor should they. So what banks have done is they've kind of realized this like catch-22 that families are in. They have a ton of equity, and they want to build with that equity and make
Yeah.
their property better, and they need it for mom or dad or whoever. And they're saying, the banks are saying, okay, you know what? If you're going to build an ADU, let's give you the loan to do that. Works just like a construction
So
loan.
it's like a construction
It's
loan.
exactly a
kind of
construction loan.
For
Yep.
that borrower that they already know about.
That they already know. So they'll
Yeah.
say, here you go, here's your construction loan. And then when we're done building, that construction loan amortizes just like your regular mortgage, and they take a second position lien. So you do not have to refinance your existing mortgage, which is very exciting.
Oh, that's a great a great thought. And that is something more banks are getting familiar with
Very much so.
dealing with. Good.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to try to wrap things up a little bit. And I want to thank you. This has been a great conversation. I really
Good.
enjoyed it. I wanted to, again, put a plug in for the AARP.org website because they have a book, a guide. It's called ABCs of ADUs. And there is also like a photo tour. So they kind of show you some different examples, and they kind of take you through them with a sequence of pictures. And the last thing I got to mention I found on the AARP website that was really funny was there's an organization that held a gingerbread house competition for ADUs. So the contestants had to build a gingerbread house, and then they had to build a second one with an addition on it.
I love it.
And it was so
I
cool.
love that.
I think it's a great way to illustrate the concept,
Yeah.
get people thinking about it in a
Yes.
fun way, just like we've had a fun time talking today.
Yep.
So Jess, thank you again for
You're
coming
very welcome,
in.
yeah.
And good luck with the building season as we're swinging into it
Thank
finally.
you very much.
Thank you,
yes.
and come back next time to Senior Speak New Hampshire.